that's something we forget about Daniel Lanois, especially since he's rocketed onto international fame and multiple Grammys and U2 and Peter Gabriel and everything. Back in the 70s, in the music community in this area, he was just one of the guys. He was another guy going from club to club, carrying his guitar down the street with him, sitting in on sessions, backing up people like Ray Materik, backing up people like, I think, Ian Thomas, and playing country rock, folk rock. He was kind of a guitar for hire. And so he grew up, and you know, for musicians in this town who are over 40, he grew up as a buddy with them. They learned the craft together.
Well, I actually think back of, you know, in our early 20s, we went on the road playing Holiday Inns and that kind of circuit 6 nights a week from 9 till 1 in the morning. And we did that for quite a few years. And you'd often find Dan, you know, we'd be in Peterborough or Sudbury or someplace, and you'd find Dan in the room working on his guitar playing, you know, like practicing and studying, and his work ethic on the road was unlike most road musicians. I, at the same time, was kind of studying bass on a different level than what I had already achieved at that point, because I'd been playing it since I was a kid. And I was studying with a classical player in Toronto once a month whenever I could afford the lesson. The work ethic on the road is very difficult because most people kind of portray road musicians as, you know, it's a 6-night party. Whereas we didn't even drink in the bar that we worked in. Maybe on a Friday night if we were staying overnight for the second week. But generally it was like it was work. Not that we didn't have fun, but we you know, we'd tour around the city and walk every inch of it if it was small enough. But there was a work ethic involved, and it wasn't something we thought up. We just assumed we had to get better, and this was the only way to do it.
But really what separates a performer like that and a talent like that is what he does with his fingers on the instrument. And so, you know, we pick up a few of these little tricks, and we get comfortable in what seems normal to us in this sort of open concept approach. You know, it's just our familiar place. So it's not really, it's, you know, it's a natural influence.
He never forgot his friends. He never forgot his hometown. And he always, when there was a big project going on, when he moved down to New Orleans, he called on friends to back him up in those recording sessions. So you'll find people like Tom Wilson went down, who later became the front man for Junk House, who's now Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. He went down to New Orleans and helped out on sessions with Bob Dylan and the Neville Brothers. That inspired Tom to go back to town, back to his hometown, and put Junk House together. And he must have carried a lot of that sound, a lot of what he learned from those New Orleans sessions with Daniel Lanois back.
I remember an amazing drive behind the whole thing. Drive from me, drive from Dan to excel. And I don't know why. Looking back, we were not trying to prove a point. I think we were just going for it, and I don't know why exactly. I think it could have possibly happened anywhere. One thing for sure, had it happened somewhere else, it would have taken on a slightly different form. But Hamilton was a good place for it to happen. Recording studios were relatively unknown, and so perhaps there was that aspect to it where it was somewhat out of the ordinary then. And so that may have actually been something that was important, the fact that there was nothing else like that going on around here. And so it was kind of new. And so had we started up in a big city, we might have just not been noticed.
You listen to all those great albums of the late 80s and late 90s. The Daniel Lanois sound is so powerful. Whether you're listening to U2, Dylan, Emmylou, Willie, you know it's a Daniel Lanois song. Even with Robbie Robertson, one of the greatest guitarists of rock and roll history, that is a distinct Lanois record. So, no, there could never be another Daniel Lanois, but I think this city would have produced something like it if it wasn't for Daniel. This is a place that allowed creative seeds to grow, and we have to value that.
I think Hamilton would have thrived musically whether we Lanois had been here or not. Although we all left our mark on the local music industry, and there actually is a thriving music industry in Hamilton. I think we may have acted as a source of encouragement, maybe, for others to think and believe that if you follow your heart and you at least reach and aim for excellence, that just maybe you might stand a pretty good chance of making something happen.
We used to do some late sessions working in Grant, in late at night, and coming in after an Eno and Lanois session, and using as our engineer, the assistant for that session would end up being our engineer. And so we'd come in, and I remember one time there was this fantastic fretless bass sitting there, and it was plugged into some beautiful choral, ambient kind of generated sound that I guess Lanois and Eno had cooked up, and it was just sitting there. It was still plugged into the whole apparatus, into the effects, and it was just sitting there. And of course, first thing, 19-year-old guys, oh, check that out, it's great, right? And I remember really being inspired by that sound and thinking, wow, because we're going ching, 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 and play that thing, and it's like you're opening up a whole, kaleidoscope. You're on another planet or something. And it was an exciting thing. And in some ways that's what inspired a lot of people to even get involved with music. Just the possibility that was opened up. The fact that, all these famous people were coming to Hamilton. Like, why the hell are they coming to Hamilton? Like, what's Brian Eno doing in Hamilton? And then a few years later, like, what's Bono doing in Hamilton? Like, U2? Like, wow. So I think it was inspiring to people. It sort of brought some kind of reality to the dream that, wow, yeah, you could actually make something that could move a lot of people and communicate and do something that's powerful and earth-shattering, and yeah, it was a very, I think, very important thing for a lot of artists, for me for sure, and a lot of, I know that I wouldn't have been as inspired had I not had a chance to glimpse that.
Perhaps Dan is a bigger part of what's going on in music here today than perhaps he was back then. Because frankly, we were operating a little bit in a cocoon, ever so slightly. Like in the Brian Eno days, not too many people in Hamilton knew that was going on. There were a few who knew. People like Glen Marshall knew everything about Brian Eno before us Lanois did. And so there were a few characters in town who got it. But I can't say that we were influencing music greatly in the 70s and 80s. Looking back now, we realize that we were just all part of a big musical family in the city.